directly, and we can keep it interactive so it's not just a one-way stream. So yeah, so with that, I think we will start. So at the beginning, I would ask Ananyan to do just a quick overview of the anatomy. So we have that cleared up, and then we can move on to the other parts. So Ananyan.
Thank you for that. Good afternoon, good evening to one all present here. So before we get into the actual sustainable goals and how we should achieve
I
that,
think if you
as
move your
said,
camera,
we should
and
really
then
focus
just move your camera a little bit higher. We can't see your face.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that.
No problem. Thoda upar.
A little bit higher? Yeah, 1 second.
Little bit. Yes, that works. Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
So let's talk about the basic anatomy. What exactly is the uterus? The uterus is a muscular bag. Now think of the uterus as a balloon, but instead of blowing air to blow the balloon, a baby or a fetus grows inside and the uterus grows. Now, where exactly is the uterus present? Suppose this is your urinary bladder. Your uterus is present somewhere over here, and the rectum is present here. Now, what exactly does the uterus do? The uterus has a very important layer called the endometrium that supplies blood and nutrition to the growing fetus if it exists. Now, aside the uterus, you see two green structures here, the ovaries. Now, the ovaries produce eggs every alternate month and send it across to the uterus. And this highway is what we call the fallopian tube. Now, let's just say if a sperm is present anywhere in between, the egg gets fertilized, and because of the product of fertilization, the egg starts multiplying. So let's talk about what happens to the egg if it's fertilized and what happens to the endometrium if it's fertilized. Is it clear till now? Are there any questions? Seeing none, we shall move on. So let's assume the egg gets fertilized. So it develops, it expands, it multiplies, and comes to the uterus. Here, it gets implanted on the endometrial wall. So when it gets implanted, the endometrial wall or the uterine wall remains thick, and it actually develops even more. So it gets more blood supply, it gets more nutrition, and it expands like the balloon we said before. And let's talk about the other scenario also. But before we go there, let's talk about two different parts, the cervix and the vagina. So what exactly is the cervix? The cervix, as you can see, is a very narrow canal that connects the uterus and the vagina. Now, this canal, as you can see, is a one-way canal because the uterus is shedded on top, which means whatever goes in has only one other way to come out. Now, this should be a very important concept that we should dwell on later. Now, apart from that, we shall also talk about the vagina. But before we get to the external aspect of the vagina, we'll talk about what the vaginal vestibule is. The vaginal vestibule is essentially an area that the cervix connects the womb or the uterus to the external genitalia. So let's get back. I think we drifted a little too much. Let's get back to the case where fertilization does not occur. So what happens is the egg does not implant on the wall this time. So all the blood that's collected here is flawed off or is coming out. Now, this is what we call menses or periods. But period of the blood, it has the blood, the unfertilized ovum, and all the mucus that provides lubrication to the given area. Important, sorry for that. There's a very important thing that we should address here. A lot of people think that this blood is either impure or dirty or clotted, but it's none of that. This blood is one of the most pure blood that can actually exist. It is so nutritious that it breathes life into the fetus that grows in all of us. It is so sacred and pure that every baby growing inside a uterus receives. I'm sorry, is there a doubt?
No, Anand, I think there are people who have to mute themselves. So please continue. Yeah.
No problem. So all this blood is actually so pure that it essentially is so sacred, breathes life into a growing fetus. Now, I think it's wrong. I think now it's time that we start correcting our ideologies about impure blood about this, because we know that every time every time menses occurs, this was actually potential blood that could have saved or breathed life into a new child. Now, let's go into a more obvious aspect, the external genitalia. So, what people think the external genitalia is only what they see. So, every time we hear the word vagina, people normally think it refers to the whole of the female reproductive system. But that's not really true. The vagina forms a very small part, but a very integral part. As you can see, there are multiple parts of the external genitalia. But one thing we should focus on is the difference between the male genitalia. In the male genitalia, there's a urogenital system, which means.
Just 1 second. If you
Yeah?
could repeat that, I think the audio and video lagged for a second.
Okay, sorry. So the one thing we should focus on here is not the multiple labeling, but the difference between the urethral opening and the vaginal opening. In males, there's a common urethral and vaginal opening, whereas in females, there are different openings. This serves as the most important reason why menstrual cups, tampons, and pads work to relax while you can still micturate or go to the bathroom or pee. And apart from this, we should also be talking about how innervated this area is. Unlike the male genitalia, this region is so vascular or has so much blood supply that this region is very permeable to toxins. Apart from that, the number of nerves present in this area is so much more than men, which means this region is so much more permeable to toxins, as I just said. So having this region exposed to anything less than complete purity could be potentially very threatening. Apart from that, that covers the basic anatomy that we should know. If there's any other question you guys would like to ask, I'm all there.
So you can put your questions in the chat box as well, and you can keep doing that throughout the session. And then, yeah, if there is anything right now, then you can ask that. Otherwise, we can move on to the next section. Yeah, I think for now we can continue, and maybe at the end of the session we can compile all the questions and talk about it. Okay, thank you so much. So now let's move on to the actual content of the session, or actual products and sustainability that we are here to talk about today. So before we do move into this part, we like to do a little game, so that everyone feels comfortable, and we start talking about this. So what it is actually, I will say one word, and if all of you can say the first word or the first feeling that comes to your mind, so you can also put this in the chat box. So the word we are here to talk about today is menstruation. So what is the first word that comes to your mind, or the first feeling, or the first incident maybe? So anything that comes to your mind when you hear the word menstruation, you can put that in the chat box. So my name is Sayuri. Yes, blood, cramps. Yeah, so the first thing that comes to my mind is red. Periodic cycle, mood swings, painful. Okay, we have many. PMS, feminine, discomfort. Thank you. This was very good. So, life, yes, very important. Um, so we see that there are many different things that even we think about when we hear the word menstruation. So like Ananyan said before, there is an idea present, or taboo surrounding menstruation come from the idea that the blood is impure or it's unclean, and it's not actually the case. And I think the scientific aspect of it actually makes it easier for us to understand that it's actually nothing but a lining that the body doesn't need anymore, so it's being kind of thrown away, thrown out of the body. So it's nothing other than that. And yeah, so that is what we should think about menstruation going ahead. I know there are many uncomfortable and painful parts of it, But yes. Yeah, so now moving irregular periods. Yes, that is also becoming more common now. Yes. So moving on to the products, I want to ask the audience how many menstruators here actually use sanitary napkins, because that is on the rise right now, especially in India. They have become very popular, and more people want to use it. So I think it makes sense that we start with talking about these pads itself. So um, first, I want to show everyone what a pad is made out of. So many times when we look at these products, we don't really look at the ingredients or what the materials are, because it just never comes to our mind. We think that this is the only available option, so that's what we end up using. But we actually opened up a pad entirely to see what's in the pad. So you can also see this on the screen, and I'll also show the actual pad. So the first layer, so usually most commercial pads are made out of 5 layers. So first layer is the bag that it comes in. So this is the individual wrapping, and it's made out of siliconized paper, which is a byproduct or of plastic. So it's essentially not degradable, and it's made from plastic. Now let's talk about the topmost and the bottommost layer of the pad. So this is a pad that we broke apart a while back. So this side, if you can see, it's a woven mesh. So it's basically like a net, and it's permeable so the blood can go through. And this is the bottom layer, which actually sticks to your underwear, which is non-permeable, meaning that it would make sure that nothing leaks through. So these two are made from polypropylene and polyethylene, which are basically again plastics and again not degradable, so that you can also see that on the screen. Yes. And then we have the inner 2 layers, which actually do all the work, so essentially all the soaking and such. So just looking at these, if you can put in the chat box what you think these are made out of, or what they look like. um, yeah, so I guess if you are seeing on the screen, it looks like tissue paper. Perfect. So if you've seen dried up wet wipes or tissue paper, that's what this is exactly what it looks like. But it is made from something called rayon and viscose, which are fibers that are um, that we get from wood pulp. So essentially it is highly processed wood pulp. So obviously you've seen a tree bark or tree trunk. That's not what this looks like. This looks very white. So it's after lengthy and a very heavy processing that we get something like this. So that is the inner layer of it, and this can contain many pesticides. If your pad uses cotton, that can also have many pesticides. So that is something also very important to think about. Now I said that this looks very white. So what do you think makes this white? Now obviously wood pulp is not white. So what do you think makes your pad so white? Bleach. Perfect. So the same bleach that you use to clean your toilets, to clean your washing places or anything like that, that is exactly what is also used in these pads to bleach them completely white. Now this is done because we have an idea in our mind that anything white equals pure or hygienic. So that is why this is done. So that is also another very harmful ingredient that is in your pads, and one that most of the people who have used a pad will also notice is the particular scent that a pad has. So I'm not just saying after using it, even before using it, it comes with a very pungent flowery scent. So that is also something that is added in. That is not what organic things smell like. So that is added perfumes. Now this is because India's standard for checking sanitary napkins haven't changed for over 4 decades. So what they still look for is comfort and feel and smell. So very superficial things. So our pads also have added, I think someone's mic is still on. Yeah, so our pads also have added perfumes in it, which you might have guessed is again an added chemical. So now we should, and it also has super absorbent polymers. Polymers again means a byproduct of plastic, so it basically increases the absorbency of the pad up to 30%. So the reason why pads are so thin and yet they can absorb so much blood is because of these non-organic things. So this is what a general pad is made out of. And now let's look at what this actually does to our body. Yes, and before that, I also want to talk about tampons. They're fairly new here, um, at least in terms of being marketed. So this is what a tampon looks like. It's also on your screen. This is what it looks like when it's in its packaging, and this is what it looks like after you've dipped it in water, and it has a string that you use to pull it out. So basically a tampon is like these inner layers of the pad, but basically compressed, and it is inserted into the vagina. So the outer layer of a tampon is also made from polypropylene and polyethylene, which are also used in the bottom and the top layer of a pad. And it has a polyester thread, and it has unknown fragrances, and cotton and rayon is what makes the absorbent core of it. So it's basically everything that's in a pad but compressed into a tiny little thing, and it's inserted into your vagina. So in ways it is worse than using a pad, because all the chemicals that are present in a pad are also there in a tampon, but it just goes inside your body. And now the second thing that the tampons do is it basically absorbs everything. So it doesn't make a difference between absorbing just the menstrual blood, but it can also absorb the natural lubrication that your vagina is supposed to have. So what this can do is that it can cause the pH level of your vagina to change and cause certain bacteria to grow, which can cause infections, mild as a yeast infection, or even harmful things such as the toxic shock syndrome, which is directly linked to tampons. And although it is rare, it can be fatal if not treated properly. If you can see, it leaves these kind of microfibers, and they can stay inside your body, and there is no way of you to know whether that's happened because you're pulling out the string. So that is also another problem with tampons. So yes, we would strongly advise you against using them, especially if you're thinking of moving to them from pads. So now let's look at what actually happens because of these two things. So rayon, viscose, and bleach, these are the three ingredients that we talked about before. These three actually release a chemical called dioxin, and that's what we're going to be talking about, because that is one of the most harmful things that any living thing can come in contact with. So the World Health Organization actually lists dioxins as one of the dirty dozen, meaning that there are 12 organic pollutants that your body should not come in contact with in any quantity. So now what happens is these get absorbed into your body. Like he said before, the vagina is very permeable. The skin of the vagina is very permeable, and anything can get absorbed into it very quickly, and it doesn't get filtered out of your system. And since dioxins are not natural, your body doesn't know what to do with it, so it doesn't get broken down, and they can accumulate in your fat cells and stay there for up to 20 years because your body doesn't know what to do with it. So what these are known to cause is cervical or ovarian cancer. They are known to cause infertility. They're known to cause abnormal cell growth in your reproductive organs, and like we talked about before, toxic shock syndrome. So dioxins are really really harmful, and the reason why no one talks about this is because they think that one pad only releases a very tiny amount of dioxins. But what we're not understanding is, or what we sometimes overlook, is that we don't use pads just once, right? So a menstruator generally uses approximately 9 9,000 to 15,000 pads in her lifetime. So if you consider it as a cumulative, in a cumulative sense, you understand that there is a lot of chemicals that your body is being that are getting released in your body, and basically they have no way of getting out of the body. So this is really something that we should think about. Again, we're not trying to scare you, but I think any products that we use, we have the right to know what is in it and what it's doing to our body. Now, the second part of this is what it's doing to the environment. So I would actually ask Khushbu to talk about the environmental effects of pads and tampons.
Yes. Thank you, Sayuri. Hello, everyone. You can hear me, right?
Yes, Khushbu, we
Hello.
can hear you. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So,
Yes.
uh, as Sayuri explained about the napkins and how many sanitary napkins one menstruator consumes in a lifetime, around 9,000 to 15,000. So I would like to ask, what do you think one sanitary napkin, how much time does one sanitary napkin take to degrade? Okay, 500 years. Rocks. Okay, that's close. 800 years. Yes. Yeah, right. So it's around 500 to 800 years, but also at that time, the napkin just starts the degrading process. It doesn't completely degrade. It's the process is just starting. And that is also just a calculation, because the first ever sanitary napkin is still lying somewhere, as it is taking so much of time. And if you will, as Sayuri has explained, the contents of a sanitary napkin, it is mostly made of plastic or byproducts of plastic. So one sanitary napkin is equivalent to 4 plastic bags. So that can really give us the understanding of how much time does it take to degrade. Also, where does a napkin go once you throw it off? A napkin or a tampon? Once you throw it off in your dustbin or landfill. Yeah, but what is the process? Like what? Once you throw it off in the dustbin, it goes to some rat picker, then through them, through the cycle, it reaches the landfill, right? So what was I saying? Yeah. So whenever you use a sanitary napkin and just remove it, how does it smell? Or how does it feel? It already has a gross feeling. It already feels like, yeah, it has a disgusting, dirty feeling. So what? It's just when we have used it for few hours, it gives us that feeling. So what will be how will be the process for the people who are really taking it from there to the landfill? The chemicals and the organic substance, our blood, is in a process of, yeah, it's risky. It is in a process, together in a process which has a reaction with each other, and that will have an impact. So those workers who pick it up, for them, ideally the process is that we should wrap it up in a paper, put a red dot on it, and then throw it off. So it is better for them to segregate it and then throw it off. Also, this segregation, should the segregated waste of particularly of the sanitary napkin should go to the incinerators, where it will be burned, and go to the incinerators where it will be burned. But as we have very less incinerator facility available in the cities, and the medical waste from the hospitals and the clinics are given preference, so the sanitary napkin really doesn't, the sanitary waste really doesn't get the preference there. So these products end up either being burnt or go to the landfill. And sorry, I'm just very distracted. Sayuri, can you just
Yeah.
pop in? Can you just
Hi.
prompt in and pop in? I'm just being very.
No, no problem, no problem. Uh,
Yeah.
so someone asked in the chat that is it okay to be burned? So now incinerator right now, incinerating is the ideal process, but it is still not healthy. Now all the chemicals that we talked about, they still get released into the air. So even if you do incinerate something, that's not the best option. So Khushbu, do you want to talk about the actual waste and how much waste we are creating through this?
Yeah, so as we said that approximately a person in a lifetime uses like 10,000 sanitary napkins. So if we consider the menstruating population, it is annually we, as it's written here, like 12 billion sanitary napkins are thrown off annually. So these just go to the landfill and they are just piling up. They are not getting degraded or nothing is happening to them. It's just a very slow process in which the chemical and the organic waste is just seeping into the land. And through the land, it is going to the groundwater, and also it is contaminating the soil. Ultimately, the groundwater is reaching the water bodies and the water is coming back to us. And through soil, it is going to the vegetation, again coming back to us. Yes, of course, this entire process is very slow and it is not like immediately going to come to us. But if we see the consumption and if we see how many years we are going to use it, it is definitely somewhere in very minor things going to come to us. Also, I was talking about the rat pickers. So these people who actually touch it, because though we segregate it or pack it in any which ways, it is going to open up at some point. And these people, when they actually take it out and put it to another place, it's it's very gross for them. It is very much affecting them in different ways, as in they are exposed to it. So their skin, their senses like eyes, ears, everything gets affected by it in various ways. So eventually we are harming ourselves because of the chemicals in the sanitary napkin. We are harming the environment and we are harming other people through the entire process. Yeah, so that is the impact we are creating.
Thank you, Khushbu. So I think this is also a very important part of using any products, that we should also think about what is happening to the product after we are done using it. We have gotten into this mindset of use and throw products where we feel that our responsibility ends as soon as it leaves our house. But if we do think about this, this is a unimaginable amount of waste. So like it says on the screen, there is 250,000 tons of garbage, and this is just for India. Now in India, only less than 20% of the women use sanitary napkins. So the rest are still using cloth or old rags. They use cotton, they use leaves, ashes, sawdust, essentially anything they can find. And even with less than 20% of the women using pads, if we are creating this much waste every year, which is not going anywhere, uh, this is a big problem. And I think it is very important for us to think about. So this was about the products that we are currently using. And I want to also
want to add in here,
yes,
Neenal has had her hand up. Neenal, would you like to say something?
I think the mic might be off mute.
Yeah, you can feel free to turn on your mic and share if you would like to say something. Okay, hand is gone. You can continue. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So now moving on to the sustainable. Sorry, did someone speak? Sorry, I can't. Uh,
No, go ahead.
I
Go.
think. Okay, cool. Thank you. So now moving on to the sustainable options. Now these are better for all the three things that we talked about right now. So this includes our bodies, the environment, and the people who are dealing with or the workers who have to deal with menstrual waste. So the first thing I'll talk about is biodegradable pads, because they're the closest to what we are currently using. So this is what, and it's also on the screen. So this is what a biodegradable pad looks like. If you see, it is identical. It has wings and it has adhesive at the back, and so it works exactly in the same way like a normal sanitary napkin. Now the only difference is the materials. So they are made from all natural materials. So this usually includes banana fiber, bamboo fiber, and the adhesive or the bioplastic which is used in the packaging is made from cornstarch. So these are the three main ingredients. There are also pads which are made from organic cotton, meaning that there were no pesticides used in creating that cotton. So that is basically what these are made out of. Use wise, they're exactly the same. And once you're done using them, you can put them in this little bag that it comes in. And then if you have a garden or something like that, you can bury it in the soil and it will biodegrade in 60 to 90 days. If not, even if you throw it with your other waste, it will degrade in the same amount of time. It might take more time if there is no soil present, but it will degrade at some point. Now it is important, and we want to highlight this, that these are not the most sustainable option, because you're still using resources to make them, and these are still one-time use products. But in terms of garbage, they are making an impact. But we would just want all of you to make sure that if you're choosing to move to this, you should make sure that the pad is not just organic but biodegradable. Now there can be pads which are organic but they're not biodegradable, so please make sure to check that. And yes, if you are comfortable with other uh, more sustainable options, please try to look into that, but this is also an option, so we wanted to let you know about that. Now the second part is cloth pads. So for years before we started using sanitary napkins, women were actually using cloth pads, and there were no problems with it as such. Only recently have government bodies and organizations started going into villages and slum areas and starting to kind of tell everyone that stop using cloth, it is not hygienic for you, and move on, or shift to sanitary napkins. And they actually do these drives where they give out these pads for free. Now what this fails to understand is, uh, first is about the product itself. They don't tell them how to use the sanitary napkins, how to dispose it, or where to dispose it. In many villages, waste doesn't get picked in the way that it does here. So for them it becomes a bigger problem, and we're creating a problem somewhere where it didn't, where nothing of this sort ever existed. And the second aspect of it is saying that cloth is unhygienic. Now, I want to explain that a little bit. Now, when we say cloth is unhygienic, it's not that there is something unhygienic with using cloth itself, but how you take care of it. So, if the product is not maintained properly, then you're going to have issues with it. Now, due to the taboos surrounding menstruation, many women feel very uncomfortable to dry their cloths outside in the open. So, what they would do is dry it under uh, uh, some other clothes, or dry it in the washroom, dry it where somewhere no one can see. So what this does is, and many of you might have noticed this even with your regular clothes, is that if something doesn't dry properly, it starts feeling damp, it has this particular scent, it can start growing fungus. So especially with a menstrual cloth, it has had your bodily fluids in it, which makes a very hostile environment for the bacteria to grow in. So that is what should be told to the people who are using cloth. Not that it's unhygienic, but that you need to take proper care of it, and which is true for all products that we use, right? So cloth pads are a great option to use. These are some of the newer kind of models if you can see, they're also on the screen. This is what cloth pads look like. They have wings in the back, on the side, which have these clip-on buttons which you can clip behind your underwear, and sits like this. They You will have to change them a little more often because they don't have anything to increase the absorbency. So you will have to change them a little more often than you would change sanitary napkins. But that is how you would use it. You just clip it behind your underwear. And the most important part is actually after using it. So you have to dry these, you have to soak these in cold water for a minimum of let's say half an hour to, let's say, a few hours. You also don't want to soak them for too long because they will start, um, there will be a particular scent. Now you won't have this scent when you're using the pad. Like I think Anjali explained in the chat, blood doesn't have a pungent smell that we're so used to. It has a very very light scent, and that is also when it comes in contact with air. Usually the blood on sanitary napkin smells so much because it comes into contact with the perfumes in it, the chemicals in it, and the air. So all of these mixed together create that horrible smell that many of us are so used to. But this doesn't happen with most of the sustainable products because they have no chemicals in it. Right, so you soak it in cold water, and after, what this does is it allows the blood to seep into the water. And after that, once you're sure that there is no more blood left in the pad, and you will be able to tell because it becomes uh, completely just looks like a new pad. And then you can either hand wash it with mild soap. Now here you can't use brushes because it can tear away microfibers of the pad. Or you can machine wash it again with a light detergent if you're comfortable with it. So once that has happened and you've washed the pad, then you need to dry it in direct sunlight or in an airy space so that it dries completely, and only after it is dried completely should you use it again. So if you take care of your pads like this, and during the time when you're not menstruating, if you in store them in a airy space, they are completely hygienic to use. They're very healthy, they're very comfortable. And yes, I think someone asked a question right now in the chat. Will the blood stains be completely gone after the wash? Yes. So even before the wash, even just in the soaking process, all the blood should come out. So usually this happens if you take the pad and you rub it against itself a couple of times, and if you keep dipping it into water, you will be able to tell whether any blood is left. Now one problem that can arise is if you use the pad throughout the day, and you're outside. So if this is a used pad, then what you can do is you can fold it in on itself and take these side wings and clip it, so it becomes like a little potly, and you can carry it in a plastic bag, and then you can come home and wash it whenever you get time. So what this can do is, if the blood is a little dried, then it is harder for the blood to come out into the water. So if you feel that there are some stains left in your pad, what you can use is either vinegar, which is a good way to get out stains, um, or you can use mild hydrogen peroxide, which is also a great way to get out stains. This usually doesn't happen. I have been using cloth pads for over a year, and it is a very easy process to get all the blood out. But in case there are some problems, this is what you can use. So that is the second sustainable option that you can try. And now we can move on to the third one. I think someone in the um, chat box also talked about it. So which is menstrual cups. So you can see one, I think, on the screen, and these are some different types of menstrual cups that we have. Um, so this is what they basically look like. So I'll show you everything about the cup. So let's actually talk about the cup itself. Now, as you can see, this is a bell-shaped device, and why it's different from all the other menstrual products is because instead of absorbing blood, this actually collects blood. Now, the good cups are made from medical grade silicone. If you do want to buy one, this is the material that it should be. There are other cups which are made from food grade silicone, TPE, which is thermoplastic, or latex, rubber. You don't want to use any of those because those can cause problems. Medical grade silicone is very tightly bound, so it's extremely non-reactive, and so basically nothing of the cup gets out in the body, and nothing, no bacteria will get attracted to the material. That's how the material is. This is why we recommend this particular material. And I don't know if you can see, there are these suction holes which actually increase the suction. There is a stem at the bottom. Some cups don't have a stem, and it has generally has a grip, so you can hold on to the cup. So that is basically the structure of a cup. And as it says on the screen, you can use them up to up to 5 to 7 years. So if you're someone who is concerned about waste, imagine how much waste you are reducing as one person. So if one person uses a cup for, let's say, 10 years, you're reducing 127 kgs of waste, which is, I think, a really wonderful thing. So I'll talk about how to use the cup now. So basically, the cup works on the principle of suction or vacuum. So um, so basically, the cup is supposed to sit around your cervix. Now, when we talked about the anatomy, the cervix is the opening of the uterus. This is where the blood comes out of. So it's basically of this size, and it fits inside your cervix, inside your cup. So basically all the blood gets collected in it, and then you just basically take the cup out, you empty it, and you wash it and you reinsert it. So one cup is going to last you for 5 to 7 years. Companies even say 10 years, but that depends on how you take care of it. So now let's talk about the insertion. So a little bit more in detail. So obviously, just looking at this cup, you see that it's quite big, and obviously you can't insert it just like this. So what you have to do is, there are certain folds that you can use that make the cup small, and also it makes sure that there is no air inside the cup. So when it goes in and opens up, it creates suction. So the first fold is the C fold, where you push down on one side of the cup, pinch the other two, remove the finger, and it looks like a C. It's also on the screen if that's easier to follow. So that's the C fold. If you can see, for it is wider at the opening, or for some cups it can be even throughout, but this is how it becomes. So this is something that is useful for some people. And then there's a second fold, which is called the shell fold or the punch down fold. So where what you're doing is you take the rim of the cup to the base of the cup, so you're pulling it in. So if I pull it in like this and I let it go, then it looks like a shell, sort of. And what this does is this makes the opening very tiny, and it becomes gradually bigger, so that is easier for some people. Now this changes from person to person, and different people can find different things easier. So that is the shell fold. So what you do in actually inserting is, if this is the vaginal opening, then you put the cup almost a little more than halfway in, and then you let it go, and it basically opens up on its own. And then it should either slide in on its own, or you will have to push it in a little bit. Now the reason why we don't want to put the whole cup in and then open it is because if your cervix is here and we push the cup too high up, then it won't open and it will just be like a little dent. So if you can see on the screen, this is how your cup is supposed to fit on the left side. And if you put it too high up, then it will be either on the side of the cervix, which will cause all the blood to just basically not get collected. And the cervix is also very sensitive, so you will be able to feel the cup. Now apart from this situation, you should never be able to feel your cup, so it doesn't feel like you're wearing anything. And if you are feeling the cup or it's hurting, jabbing something, then you know that the cup is not inserted properly, in which case you can take it out and insert it again. So basically that's how you insert it. Fold, put it halfway in, let it open, slide it in. So I know it sounds confusing in the beginning, but you know your body more than you realize. And once you do use it, it will become very easy. And within the first 2 cycles, you'll be able to figure out which fold works for you. Now, the second thing to keep in mind is also the position that your body is in. So if you're sitting down or if you're sitting on the toilet, then your pelvic bone comes lower, which means you'll have to maneuver the cup kind of like this. You'll have to go under it, otherwise you'll hit your pelvic bone, which is why we suggest that if you stand up or if you're doing a squat, or if you put one leg somewhere higher and one leg on the floor, then it becomes very easy because there is nothing coming in between the canal, so your cup can go in very easily. So someone asked whether it is comfortable when you're swimming. So cup is the only menstrual product with which you can do literally anything you want. You can play, you can run, you can cycle, you can do a handstand, you can swim. You can basically do anything that you want to, and the cup, since it's since it sits like this and it has created suction, there is no way that it will just slip out or it'll move anywhere. So you can do everything comfortably, yeah, even sleep. So that is basically how it is. And now the second part of it is taking the cup out. So now the cup is inside, it fits like this. And yeah, I will answer the question just in a bit. So the cup is inserted and sits like this. Now what has happened now that the cup is filled up, so what you want to do is you need to break the suction to be able to get the cup outside. Now since the cup is filled more or less more than halfway, you don't need to do a whole lot. If you just pinch at the base of the cup, air will be able to go in and the suction will be broken, in which case you can just pull the cup out. And if you dump the water in the toilet, you can wash it with water. Please don't use any soap because it won't do anything to the cup, but it can change the pH value of your vagina, which we really don't want. And like I said before, the cup is completely non-reactive, so nothing will happen. So there is no need to essentially clean it with soap. So that is what you do with it. And just before and after your cycle, you do need to sterilize the cup. So this process is just like how you clean feeding bottles for babies. So you boil the water, you put the cup in for 10 to 15 minutes, and then you take it out. And once it's dried, you can put it in these cloth bags that it comes in. And basically that's all you need to do. So that is how you take care of a cup. And this is basically a very brief introduction to the cups and how to use them. I'm just going to check if there are any questions that have not been inserted. So okay, how will we know when the cup is full? So with a pad or anything else, it's very easy to tell because you can see the blood. But with a cup, it can be a little more tricky. Now one thing is, a cup holds about 25 to 20 to 25 milliliters, so which is already a lot more than a pad would. So you can keep the cup in for even 12 hours if you don't have a very heavy flow or it's on the last few days. But generally it would feel a little heavy, or if the suction is broken because the cup got too heavy, then you can feel slight air bubbles. Now this is a not very common if you generally change it after 4 to 6 hours on the days where you have very heavy flow. And then if you change it let's say 8 to 10 hours when you don't have such a heavy flow, then it's very rare that the cup would leak. But for some people, if it is very, if they have a very high flow, then it can happen. But all that also you'll be able to figure out in the first 2 cycles.
Just to add something
Yes.
here,
Yeah.
you also it's like when you're using a sanitary napkin, you develop a sort of intuition, right? When the pad is full and you go to the washroom accordingly. So same with the cup, after 1 or 2 cycles, you'll start understanding when your cup is full, despite not getting any signs. And you'll know that because it's your first day, you have to change it after a certain
Yeah.
amount of time. And because it's your fourth day, you can leave it in longer maybe. So it becomes something that you get used to, and it's like a routine that you end up following. And just to ensure that, because the first 2 cycles you may not understand your own menstrual cycle as well, you can use it with a sanitary napkin just in case you didn't quite understand when to change it and it slightly leaks or something.
Yes. So now the last thing, which is about the pricing of all these sustainable options. Anjali has also put it in the chat box. I just want to say it once again. Usually we think that sustainable options cost a lot more, but in this case, they're just an investment. It's something that you're paying one time, and then you don't have to pay anything for a very long time. Now with biodegradable pads, your normal pad costs up to, let's say, 7 to 10 rupees per pad, and these can go from 3 rupees per pad right up to 15 plus rupees per pad. So it depends on the company. So there is a chance that you can get them for cheaper than what you're spending on your sanitary napkins. With cloth pads, they cost around 100 rupees, 150 rupees per pad, and you need to, I would recommend you get a set of at least 5 pads, just in case. So you can also buy more if you feel like you have a heavier flow or you need them for a longer amount of time. And with that, you can use them for 1 to 2 years or 2 to 3 years, depending on how well you take care of them. But usually that's how long you can use them for. And with the cup, I already said that you can use them for 5 to 7 years, and you can and they cost right from 400 rupees to 2000 plus rupees. Now you need to make sure that they are made from medical grade silicone, and it usually should cost around 1,000 rupees, plus minus 100 200 rupees. So that is what we recommend. For cups, we have tried, as you can see, we have tried many brands, because there are so many brands available. But we recommend the rustic art, which is, if you can see, it's a kind of translucent cup. It hasn't changed color. It is made from medical grade silicone. It has a very small stem. So now the stem is only for you to be able to locate the cup. So you're not actually supposed to pull on it, because if you pull on something that is suction, then the suction is just going to increase. So this is just for people to be able to locate the cup. Now some women have a higher cervix, so their cup will sit much higher up from their vaginal opening. So that's all the cup is there for. If you feel that you don't need the stem, which would be the case for most Indian women, because our cervixes aren't that high, so you can just cut off the cup, or you can also get cups with no stems. So basically this is the brand that we recommend. And you can also use stone soup, which is also medical grade silicone, and we will share the list with you after the session of all the medical grade silicone cups, which are Indian brands that you can use. There was just one question. Someone asked whether you need to buy 2 cups. So that's actually not the case. So like I said before, once the cup is filled, you can just take it out, empty it, rinse it, and reinsert the same cup. So one person uses 1 cup. So you cannot share cups because you have used it once already, but you only need to buy 1 cup at a time. And the second thing is about size. So this is the rustic art cup. uh, Okay, someone asked how to remove the cup. So no, you do not pull on the stem. So you basically need to pinch it from the bottom. So you'll have to put a finger in and pinch it, which will cause the suction to break, and then you take it out. So you're never supposed to pull on the stem, because it will increase the suction and that will just end up hurting you. So just pinch at the bottom, take it out, empty it, rinse it, reinsert it. Okay. Yeah, so I was talking about the sizes. So if you can see, this one is the large of the rustic art, and this is the small one. as you can see, there isn't much difference. It's half a centimeters worth difference. This one has its stem cut off, and if you see the diameter, again, it's not that different. So usually most companies have a small and a large, or they have a small, medium, and a large. So small cup is for menstruators who are under 20 or under 25, and the large cup is for people who are over 25 or who have given birth. So it doesn't matter if you've had a c-section or have given a normal delivery, you still need a larger cup. So it just depends, because since your vagina is a muscle, it's not that it will change too much. That's why the cups aren't that very different. It's just so it fits perfectly, and you can use it comfortably. Okay, so someone has asked, can young girls use the cup? So we have helped girls of, I think the youngest is 14 to use it. Now, this depends a little bit on the person themselves. Some people can find it very, very easy to use it. Now, medically speaking, or in terms of your body, there is no harm in using the cup. But sometimes the body isn't ready, because it is a foreign object going inside your body. So if the person doesn't feel comfortable with it, or if it's hurting, it's not inserting properly, then you can just wait for a few years and you can use some other sustainable option, and then you can shift back to cups. Yes. Was someone asking something? Okay. If there are any questions, you can put it in the chat box. Um, yes, I talked about. Yeah. I think someone also asked for us to talk about menopause a little bit. So, if Ananyan is there, and he can maybe quickly talk about. Okay, just before that, someone asked which is the best option according to us. So in terms of sustainability, in terms of um, waste, let's say cups are the best option. In terms of resources, you're using much less. One cup is produced and then you can use it for 10 years and you don't need anything else. Price wise, you're covering up the price in 3 to 4 months. So in every way, cup is the best option to use. Right after that, I would say are cloth pads, because in most cases the cloth inside is textile waste, which means uh, pieces which were too small to use for anything else, but you still need a new cloth for the outer layers of it. So that is still a good option. They're good for your body, they're good for the environment. They can degrade because they're made from natural fibers. And then we have biodegradable pads, which do have which you do need a lot of resources for. uh, is there uh, is there chance of any infections? So with all these three products, like I said, proper care is very important. For the cup, you need to sterilize it. For pads, you need to wash them and dry them properly. And for biodegradable pads, you need to change them after maximum 6 to 7 hours, I would say. What this does is that your blood is an organic fluid, right? So it is going to start growing bacteria in it after a point. That's why you need to change it. So it's uh, even with sustainable and organic products, your blood is still present, and especially if it's in contact with air, bacteria is going to start to grow, and it will create a damp and an environment full of moisture. So that is still not very good. And mm, very damp environments can cause yeast infections. But other than that, if you take this proper care, there is absolutely no infections that you would need to worry about. uh, okay, someone asked, can you wash pads with the solution? Are you talking about hydrogen peroxide or vinegar? So you don't need to wash with them. You need to soak them in just water, then wash it in a very mild detergent. And the chemicals are only to be used if there is a stain. That is purely for stain removal. after the pad is dried, and until then you don't need any of that, and it's very easy to get all the blood out. uh, yes, okay, so if that's all the questions, then we can quickly talk about menopause. And if there are any questions, I'll keep answering them in the chat box.
Yeah, so just quickly talking about menopause before we end the session. There was a question about menopause, and the specific question was there's a lot of irritation, there's a lot of clotting and things like that. It's very common at menopause to face like abnormalities in how frequently you're getting menstruation, how the type of the consistency of the blood, the color of blood. There will be changes, and I would say that if you're facing a lot of issues, please do visit your gynecologist. Sometimes there's a deficiency of estrogen or just other hormones, and just a simple tablet of those particular hormones generally makes it all right. The other thing is that definitely during menopause, the entire region gets even more sensitive, just as it is when you start menstruation as well. So it is actually one of the best times to switch over to something sustainable. I know a lot of our mothers switched over to sustainable products during menopause, and it really helped. Irritation went down significantly, rashes went down significantly. So you can definitely try that. If you would like, if you feel like the cup is too much, you can definitely move to cloth pads, right? And you can try using cloth pads. Like Sayuri said, it's very easy to change outside as well. You can just make it into a little potli, carry it home and wash it. So um, you can definitely try that on menopause. It's a great option. But please do visit your gynecologist if you are having quite a bit of issues. And just to reiterate, school-going girls, menstrual cups are still a great option, and cloth pads.
Yeah.
But honestly, all three, you can use any of the three options that we spoke about today, and they all work well.
I just want to highlight one thing that Anjali said. I think this should be done for all menstruators. Please visit your gynecologist at least as a checkup once in a while. I know a lot of us don't go to any sort of doctors unless we have a problem. So it is very good to go and get yourself checked. Now, this is especially important because a lot of young girls are going through PCOD and PCOS, or they have some sort of infections. And in general, if you can get your tests done for cervical or ovarian cancer at an early age, it's a great idea because they can develop during childbearing age, and they're very hard to detect unless you go and test for them. So if you can, please go to your gynecologist just once in a while, just to make sure that everything's all right, because many things we generally dismiss as just, oh, this is something that just happens, and we never talk about it because we feel very uncomfortable. But if you do this, it will be wonderful, and you're just making sure that you're healthy. So that's a great thing, and everyone should do it. So if there are any questions, final things, you can add that. If not, thank you so much for having us. I hope the session was helpful in some way. And if you ever want to talk about anything, if you have any questions, honestly, anything that you need to talk about, there are details on the screen. You can contact us in any way that is comfortable and convenient to you, and we are always here to help. So thank you so much for having us.
So
Oh, okay.
thanks a lot, Sayuri. Thanks, Anjali, Anan, and Gunjan. No, sorry, I missed the name.
Khushbu.
Khushbu, sorry. And thank you all ladies who joined. And if you have had put your email IDs in the chat window, you will get a mail. But Anjali and Sayuri, I definitely recommend you keep track of people who have converted,
Yes.
so that you know your impact can be measured. This is definitely much needed. There is a huge taboo even now to talk about menstruation, and in spite of so many invites going out, very few people have joined actually. So anyway, so it's a good beginning. So at peak time we had around 40 people joining in. So thank you so much, all the ladies who joined today.
There's one
And
question, I guess.
Yeah, there was one question
yes,
that came up whether all pads have dioxins. Now, like I said, dioxins are released from rayon, viscose, and bleach. These are the three main ingredients which can release dioxins. So, if you can find out whether your pad has it, these are very common in commercially made pads, especially the ones which have super absorbent polymers and are super thin but can still absorb a lot and are super stark white, the kind of white that you get after bleaching something generally has a bluish tint. So if you do notice that, if you can find out the materials, it is very difficult to do so, but if any of these three materials or ingredients are in that, then there is a chance that dioxins are being released into your body, so please be careful of that. So yes.
thank you. With this, we can close. If nobody
Yes.
any other questions, a wonderful session as usual. Thank you, girls.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And
Yes.
if anyone would
Thanks.
like to organize a session for your friends, office, anywhere, or if you would like to buy a cup or any other product, you can definitely email us or message us. I put my number and our email up. We'll also send you an email with all of this information, so you can definitely reach out to us. Do let us know if you'd like us to conduct a session. And thank you for being here today. Thank you for hosting us, Sunita Andy.
Thank you. Thanks, Anjali. Yeah. Thanks, Ayuri,
Yeah, thank you.
and Anand.
Thank
Yes. Thank
you.
you. Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.